Good morning, everybody. This is Tim Long, one half of Horror Movie Yearbook, here with your horror hotline for July 30th, 2018. Hope everybody had a good weekend. We are going to try to get back in the swing of things here. At least I am today, as you can tell. Had a longer weekend, but that means that I had some time to kind of lay around this weekend, so I finished a couple of books. I've been trying to read a little bit more lately. Like I said, I had a long weekend where I was able to get through a couple books that I was reading. Both of them horror related. Here's how I usually do my reading. I have one book for at home. It's usually the paperback, and then I have one on my Kindle that I take with me to work. So I'm usually reading 2 or 3 books at a time. So yeah, the one at home, one on my Kindle that I usually take with me to work for like breaks and lunch breaks. And then I have an audiobook. Audiobook I usually try to listen to on my runs. So I usually have about 2 or 3 books that I'm trying to read at a time. What I don't know how good that is for retaining certain things, but that's how I do it. So I kind of jump around. I finished a couple books this weekend. Wanted to talk about them real quick. The first book I read was called The Gone World by Thomas Sweterlitsch. This is a science fiction book. It deals with a lot of heavy science fiction themes, but it's also has some elements of horror throughout. I would compare some of those horror related elements to something like an Event Horizon. But here's the summary from Amazon for you. Shannon Moss is part of a clandestine division within the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. In western Pennsylvania in 1997, she is assigned to solve the murder of a Navy SEAL's family and to locate his vanished teenage daughter. Though she can't share the information with conventional law enforcement, Moss discovers that the missing SEAL was an astronaut aboard the spaceship USS Libra, a ship assumed lost to the currents of deep time. Moss knows firsthand the mental trauma of time travel and believes the SEAL's experience with the future has triggered this violence. Determined to find the missing girl and driven by a troubling connection from her own past, Moss travels ahead in time to explore possible versions of the future, seeking evidence to crack the present-day case. To her horror, the future reveals that it's not only the fate of a family that hinges on her work, for what she witnesses rising over the time's horizon and hurtling toward the present is the terminus, the terrifying and cataclysmic end of humanity itself. So yeah, as you can see, there are some pretty horrible elements to the story. I'm going to be honest, I did not grasp this novel fully and a lot of the ideas that it explores. Maybe like 50% of the time I felt like I had a solid hold on what was going on around me, or what was going on in the book. This is a book that explores concepts very weighty and just kind of like existentially horrifying to me, that like there were times when it was harder for me to get through than I expected. Like it felt like my head was going to explode sometimes. I was like terrible at science. Yeah, I was terrible at science classes. I was a bad student when it came to that. So I had to put this. There were a few days where I had to put this book down just because it was giving me a headache. But if you are interested in in kind of time travel and multiple universes as they branch out, and you feel like this is a very in-depth, very scientifically accurate novel from what I can tell. But I did end up finishing it because I was interested in where the story was going to end up and interested where the lead character was going to end up. The back cover of the book describes it as True Detective meets Inception. I agree with the True Detective part for sure. I think that's a pretty solid comparison. The Inception part of that statement, I'm not sure I'm 100% on board with. Inception is a much lighter and I think hopeful film than what The Gone World is. The Gone World gets very bleak at times. Even slight spoilers for True Detective, I guess. And, well, not so much this book. This book you have to read to kind of parse through. I'm staying as spoiler free as possible. But even True Detective ends on a more hopeful note than this. Well, I don't want to say anything about the ending. The ending's not... But this is very bleak and very heavy throughout the book. Not so much just the ending. I'm not limiting it to that. The concept of the terminus, the end of humanity, felt like Event Horizon to me, in that if you've seen Event Horizon, a lot of it is that spaceship coming back from a place of no return. What I liked about the book, and why I think it's a very good novel, even if I didn't personally love a lot of it or even really understand a lot of it, a lot of like this kind of hardcore science fiction that I've read isn't the best for me when it comes to character. This features a few strong characters, particularly the lead character. All of the characters are human and flawed, but still interesting, and they feel flesh and blood. They feel like people that are good at especially the lead character, that are good at their jobs, but are caught up in something bigger than them and something that they might not even be able to fully comprehend, and they're kind of working through it as they go. They work as a great kind of cipher into the heavier concepts that the book deals with, particularly Shannon, the lead character, because like us, they can't fully grasp some of the things that are happening in the novel, but they're there because they have a job to do, a life to live, and a case to solve, just like us. The book is very cinematic, and I think it will lend itself to an adaptation. I really like the main character of Shannon Moss. She is very highly trained and professional, but still curious and human. Dana Scully is brought up numerous times. Dana Scully from The X-Files, Gillian Anderson's character. She's brought up numerous times throughout the book, and she doesn't feel like a copy of that character. Shannon watches The X-Files. The book takes place some in the 1990s and some in the 2000s. But Shannon watches The X-Files, and Dana Scully is kind of a model character for her. And she feels like a woman who is inspired by Scully by watching her. I think that's an important distinction, that not a copy, inspired by, and I think it's a cool character trait. This is a good book. I think people who are smarter than me will be able to grasp the concepts better than I did. But I do think it's a book for people looking for something a little more challenging, and particularly horror fans that might be looking for something a little horror related and still outside but a little bit outside their comfort zone. There is a film adaptation in the works from Neil Blomkamp. I don't know where it's at in development now that he's taken on the RoboCop reboot. I'm not sure if I wouldn't like a more streamlined version of this story. It might be better for me to grasp. Maybe it would be one of those good things where I watch the movie and then reread the novel as a way to kind of grasp a lot of it. Yeah, good book. Once again, recommended for people smarter than me, I'll just say it. Something completely different, honestly, that I also finished this past weekend, Meg by Steve Alton. This is Meg, a novel of deep terror by Steve Alton. This is the basis for the Jason Statham giant shark movie coming out in a few weeks now. I have read this before a long time ago. It's probably been 10 or 15 years now since I've read this. I decided to reread it before the movie came out because this is a very quick read. This is a sit on the beach in the summer, read it in a few hours type read. Here's the back cover. If Michael Crichton and Clive Cussler were to combine their talents to create the ultimate underwater suspense, can you imagine? To create the ultimate underwater suspense novel, Meg would be the result. A relentlessly frightening page-turner, this year's wet and wild, non-stop thrill ride of an adventure. Many years ago, on a top-secret scientific exploratory dive into the Pacific Ocean's deepest canyon, Jonas Taylor found himself face-to-face with an ancient monster too horrifying for his modern mind to contemplate. He was the sole survivor of the creature's wrath that day, left with the almost unimaginable belief that the attacker was a real Meg, the prehistoric Carcharodon megalodon. All the experts sneered at the thought of Meg, but she is indeed all too real. Now something has stirred her from the ocean depths. That ancient creature is rising, hurtling toward the surface in a deadly fury, ready to churn the tides of terror. I'm going to be honest, there's not much to dissect here with Meg. This is like B-level, maybe C-level Michael Crichton. It's Steve Alton's first book. He would go on to write like 6 or 7 of these Killer Shark books and a few other books as well. But when I say like B-level, C-level Michael Crichton, I also do not mean that as an insult, as it's absolutely fantastic. This is, like I said, a sit down on a summer day or just a day in general, but a summer day is probably the nicest, and read it all in a few hours. It's a giant shark book. That's it. The climax is like a breathless last 40 pages probably, and it's a lot of fun. Everything leading up to it, though, honestly, you don't have to pay that close of attention to. It's just really silly. There's a wife character named Maggie. This was a book written in the 90s. It came around during that kind of like 90s monster science fiction novel boom of them. You get the Crichtons, stuff like Beach by Peter Benchley, Relic by Lincoln Child and Douglas Preston. But there's a character of Maggie, and I'm not necessarily sure it holds up the best. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure it held up that well in the 90s either. But she's essentially a gold digger, horrible person who is there to just drag down our hero in the archaeologist. Was he an archaeologist or a paleontologist? I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember. But she's there to just be a big weight on him. And spoilers, I'm going to spoil this 20-something-year-old shark novel. She gets eaten, and she gets a horrible death, and it's almost as if we're just supposed to cheer out loud when it happens. She has no redeeming qualities, so you just kind of feel good about it. I have a feeling that this character may not make it over to the new movie. I have a feeling quite a bit is going to be different about this. I don't think Jason Statham's character is going to be... I think Jason Statham might be a little bit different in the movie than he is in the book. Which is fine. This is... Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what that was. This is not a great work of literature we're dealing with. The ending is completely bonkers. Essentially, he takes a submarine and drives it into the shark's mouth, and then he gets it in there and he blows it up from the inside, and then he cuts his way out with a knife from inside the shark's inside the shark's insides. It's completely nuts. The book is completely nuts. The book is insane. I would definitely... This gets my highest recommendation, even though the Garm World did not. Meg definitely does. So please read Meg. Make sure you're prepared for the Jason Statham movie coming out in a few months. I think that looks like a lot of fun as well. Box office wrap up for the weekend. The first Purge came in at number 10, sticking around in the top 10, bringing in $2.2 million. It's up to $65.5 million overall. $1 million past the original Purge, but still behind parts 2 and 3. And then Unfriended the Dark Web is just outside of the top 10 at number 11. It's at $1.5 million for a total of $7.3 million. I don't think it's going to catch... The first one made more than I expected. I think the first one was in the 20s or 30s. This one's going to end up a lot lower than that. Mission Impossible was number 1. I went and saw that this weekend. That is a blast. That is probably one of the better action movies. Different than Rogue Nation. Rogue Nation felt like more of a spy movie to me. This feels like a big blockbuster action movie, but the action sequences are really phenomenal. I mean, they're some of the best I've seen in a while. They're easy to understand visually, and they have a great sense of structure to them, the action pieces. Every action piece in that movie has a beginning, middle, and end. And that is refreshing to see in a lot of ways, because we don't get that, unfortunately. You would think that would be one thing action blockbusters do well, and a lot of them don't. This one puts a lot of action blockbusters to shame when it comes to the sequences. That was, number 1 for weekend. That's the weekend. That was the weekend for me. Reading and not much else. I did not get a chance to watch the newest episode of Castle Rock. I'm probably going to watch it within the next day or two, so I'll do that. I did get a chance to watch Ghost Stories, the new British horror movie starring Martin Freeman based on a play. I'm working on a review for that. I'll probably get that up within the next couple days, but no, that's it for today. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Once again, a reminder, we've got our horror movie yearbook. The main podcast has its Fear episode up, Fear with Mark Wahlberg, Reese Witherspoon. Our episode's a lot of fun. We also cover some Comic-Con stuff and Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. Midwest Game Nerds covered the new No Man's Sky game. That episode should be out now in your feeds. Gone to Texas should be the Preacher podcast should be out within the next couple of days. Patreon.com/MidwestPodNet. You can donate to our podcast network for as little as $1 a month. I think that's it. I will see everybody tomorrow. Have a good one.